Hey, Jar.
Hello, this is going to make it feel like Friday, right? Having this meeting.
Amy, I'm going to move some of the blocker issues that we are listing into a header called projects, or you can rename it whatever you want later on. But for example, removing pages complete or changing pages completely, it's not going to happen immediately, although we did remove the NFS dependency, so that should help. So I think it makes sense to track these things, but not necessarily like have them in focus there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Great. Cool. Jeff, do you want to quickly skim through the blockers and call out the interesting stuff?
Yeah, sure thing. Let's take a look. Okay, first item in the bulleted list here is the live traces, which actually we should call these build logs, not live traces. As far as I know, this is good and on track for 13.5, so I don't think there's much to talk about here. The next item here is mapping services for cloud native. This doesn't have a clear solution still, and we probably need to, put our heads together with distribution to figure out what we're going to actually do for this. We're fine, like I said, or like I've been saying, we're fine for now. We're fine for Git HTTPS, obviously. We're going to be fine for GitLab Shell because that is a separate pod for Git SSH, but after that, then it becomes an issue, and it'll be even a more pressing issue because as far as I know, like, I guess after the build logs stuff is done, we're unblocked on the front end. So that's like, we'll definitely want to start migrating web and API immediately. Yeah, and the next item is for proxy request buffering. It's still unclear whether this may not be an issue if we just disable it globally, though we haven't tried that yet on the VMs. We think that it's probably okay because we have Cloudflare in front, but we're going to need to investigate that. The cross-AZ network traffic after migration, I think the Nginx to sidecar is off the table now, so I'm going to remove that. That's highest priority for me right now, or what I'm working on. Maybe Scarbeck will join once he frees up from Sidekick. It's moving along. I was hoping to have something in staging by tomorrow for this. I think we'll probably have the clusters spun up. I'm not sure if they'll be fully configured, but hoping to. And then tentatively saying like we'll be able to have the other clusters at least starting to run in production, like configured in production next week, maybe even running in production, but we'll see. The unencrypted connection in Workhorse, I don't think there's anything we're going to do about this. Maybe we should just take it off the list.
Should we take the blocker label off the issue as well?
Yeah, I think I might have already. Did I?
I'm not sure, we can check, but.
Yeah. Whoa. And Scarbeck's Dirty Dozen. What do you got here, man?
Yes, or not yesterday, the day before yesterday, I created a lot of issues related to what's not even worth trying out in Sidekick for the evaluation before we move them to Kubernetes based on the feedback that we got in our spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So I created all these. I was going to mention them later, but yeah, these are all the queues that we received feedback that they have a dependency, and I wasn't even going to bother putting these inside of catch NFS for evaluation. There should be like nearly 20.
And what's the plan with these? Like who needs to do the work?
Engineering, development.
Can someone post a link to all those issues? I mean, I saw them and I marked them all as red, but I need a link because I need to inform people of this, because this is adding like quite a lot of issues to InfraDev.
In the discussion item on the second bullet point, I linked all of them inside of an epic. Oh, excuse me, that's the wrong bullet point. My apologies, hang on.
So these are the catch-all queues that have an NFS dependency.
Yeah, these are the individual queues that.
Did we? I was thinking that this dependency would just remove itself with the other blockers. Is that right? Or do we have to actually specifically go in and do individual work for these things?
I don't think there's work for us to do unless we need to help engineering do some investigation on these queues. For the most part, this is going to be up to engineering to fix whatever code paths are relying on the shared storage.
I mean, the cron jobs were already like these. That's kind of expected, right? These are the cron jobs that do cleanup. Maybe we should take a look at those individually. But
wait, aren't cron jobs? Okay, so I'm confused. Isn't cron job?
Status of the payment, I'll contact Jeff. What do you think?
I'm hearing someone talking, so I don't know what's happening.
I think that might be. I'll meet.
Okay. Scarby, did you confirm that the cron jobs are actually the jobs that execute the work, or are those the ones that just schedule a job that will do the work? I know it's hard to get it to understand, but I can repeat again.
No, what you said makes sense. It's been a while since I looked at that.
Let's focus on those couple first, just to figure it out before I go and explain further why I added to InfraDev 20 more issues that are high priority, if possible.
We may want to just put all of these in one issue and then spin them out into separate issues if we think they're gonna, if it's gonna be necessary. Because
don't we?
Okay.
What did you mean? Sorry, Jarv, I didn't catch that then.
I mean, what I mean is that, some of these are like specific to pages, and once pages goes to object storage, I assume they just go away. But then again, we need to validate that.
How do we handle this? Does anyone have any ideas? Because like just getting them as individual issues is not going to get us far.
I think we need to do some research to understand some of these, because I'm looking at some of these and I don't see what part of shared storage some of these rely on. Maybe they're just writing out. Like,
a few of these we got feedback on. So some of these issues have like this little snippet of feedback that we received inside of the spreadsheet. The majority of these, we did not get any feedback at all. The person who filled out the spreadsheet simply said yes, that they depend on shared storage.
Carver, can I ask you one thing then right now? Can you please remove InfraDev from those issues that you created just for the time being until we figure this out? Because I'm afraid this is going to overwhelm everyone. It's not going to be clear what they need to do. It's going to drag along for too long. So we need to do some organization before we go into it.
Just scanning through these quickly, chat notification, no idea why that would require shared storage. The cron jobs, sure, they might, because we're cleaning up files, but we need to understand them a bit better. Let's see, this is
Basically, a lot of these are dependent
Yeah.
on job traces and also on page.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
we group those together, we'll get a better picture of the ones that are remaining, and we can ask for help for those specifically. Because right now it's very noisy, like security scans and so on. Like I know where to go with those, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, like, yeah, I don't know why security stance depends on shared storage. I'm hoping it's not.
Reports, probably reports.
You think it's writing reports to shared storage?
I'm assuming that's something like that because it's probably
Yeah.
generating a report and it's serving it from disk at certain points, maybe just temporarily or something, but we need to verify that. It might have been the
Yeah.
case before.
Okay, sounds good.
This sounds like, based on this conversation, maybe I should just close these issues and then maybe after batch 3, shove these into Catch NFS and do the testing.
Don't close the issues. Just let's remove the infradev from it. Maybe leave a comment that we are still working on it or something like that, right? Like we want to batch this a tiny bit better. I think it makes sense for them to be documented individually because you're going to do the work individually.
Yeah.
But like just throwing them over the fence in this volume is not going to do anything.
Understood.
Just action for you, remove infradev as soon as possible, like probably during this call.
Will do.
I think the dropping unstructured logs, I think I can just remove this from the blocker. GitLab pages, cloud native support, gRPC. I don't know, like, I don't think this is a blocker. I'll remove it. Boxer request buffering, that remains to be seen. Nginx, sounds like we're just going to close that one. And remove application.log, similar to unstructured log. I guess we can remove this as well with unstructured logs turned off by default. Or we can at least remove from the blocker list. So I'll update those issues. So from what I see, it looks pretty good. I think the summary is besides the queue work, it really comes down to breaking out the services, build logs, and pages. And that's pretty much it.
That's a good situation to be in because it allows us to work on the things we need to work now while we wait for these.
Cool. I think that's pretty much it for blockers, projects. Maren, did you? This is actually from previous.
Yeah,
meetings,
I just
but,
moved it. That's what I said. Like we can remove it if you all think it's not necessary, but it's kind of useful to have some of these things handy in one place.
Right. What is the current horizon for pages on object storage now that it's decoupled from Puma? Do we think that's going to happen before the end of the year or not?
No, not. At
Probably
least,
not.
okay, let's put it differently. New pages might end up on object storage before the end of the year. Pages that exist already in shared storage, the migration is going to take longer. So we're going to run both at a certain point in time.
Okay. Okay. Scarbeck, I think you just added these items here. Do you want to, we're in the discussion section. Do you want to talk about?
Yeah.
These are just the issues you just discussed.
Yeah, so the first one was precisely what we just discussed. I guess we don't have anything else to discuss there because I'm going to have some action items here. I've also compiled the batch 3 that I'll start putting together the necessary merge requests for. I'll probably add mailers to this prior to performing that. It looks like they've already merged and gotten into production a fix for the mailer, so it should not depend on NFS anymore. But besides that, I'm ready to start rolling with batch 3 for the Sidekick migration, unless anyone else has any comments about it.
Are you seeing any problems in production so far? Did you observe anything?
I haven't observed any problems yet. I haven't seen anything or no one's reported anything, so I'd like to keep it that way. I still occasionally check Sidekick on Sentry for any new or errors that just don't seem right, and I haven't come across anything that's new. Occasionally I'll see a new error because it's like a connection failure to some random thing and some code path can get to, but that's completely unrelated to what we're doing here. But I haven't seen anything, so I've been happy so far.
That's surprising and awesome at the same time. So that's awesome.
All right, Joe, everyone talk about WebSockets.
Yeah, so the WebSockets for interactive terminal is complete, though there isn't a whole lot of traffic there. We're now discussing Action Cable. There were some comments made on the epic, since this epic was originally all about Action Cable, but since kind of like expanded its scope to include everything that the Git fleet handles. So I broke it out into a separate issue just now with a summary of like what we've been discussing. It sounds like we want to try to handle this Action Cable traffic in process in Puma, not as a separate service, which means that we would just have it being processed by the existing web service pods that are handling Git traffic. I just enabled it in staging for testing. We need to figure out how we're going to kind of slow roll this in Canary production to ensure that we don't put too much pressure on Redis. Comment on the issue if you have anything to suggest, but I think we'll just do kind of the normal change issue where we'll do a slow roll and make sure that it doesn't cause any problems. If it doesn't, then we can just mark that as done.
I mean, just a question. Do we need to be so careful with it, given that it's a completely new feature and has no traffic on it?
Yeah, I would assume not, but yeah, I don't know.
I mean, this
there were concerns raised. Yeah.
Okay, I'll read it up. I'll read up the concerns, but I'm like, this is one of the services where I would be like happy to say YOLO it in Canary, if nothing else, or probably even production, given that it's a new feature. No one should be using it anyway. So I'll read that up. Thanks.
Yeah. On to Zono Clusters. So this is moving along. We have the Zono Cluster config being reviewed now for Terraform, and we have some decisions on how we're going to divide things up in Terraform because we want to avoid copying and pasting a lot of config 4 times. I broke it down into the things that are repeated for each cluster. Well, actually, the first one is just subnets, and this is just the fact that we have to allocate many more subnets now than we did before. There's no way around this. We can't let we don't want to let GCP just allocate these subnets dynamically because we want to avoid overlap between VPCs for peering. So this means that we're going from basically from 3 subnets that we configured to 12. It's not terrible, but it's, and it is what it is. Naming.
How many addresses do we have in those subnets?
So yeah, so how much space do we have?
Yes.
We have enough because for production and staging, we have plenty of subnet like our reserved space is plenty. For pre-prod, I had to steal a bit from legacy Azure, but we're not using that anymore, so it's not a big deal. I mean, I can send you there's a markdown document that has all the subnets. We have plenty of room for now. When we go to multi-large, which is I'm sure what you're thinking, we may want to start thinking about that. It's only an issue when we peer, so it's not like I think we have to make sure we don't overlap with ops, but as long as we don't peer a multi-large deployment with production, then you can technically overlap without an issue.
Can I put a requirement immediately on this one? Can we set up monitoring and alerting on this before we do anything?
What do you mean?
We want to have alerts on when we are starting to run out of space.
Oh, I wish that was.
I don't know. But that's
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that like is going to be something we can do right away. And are you sure? Like, I mean, let me show you.
Show me.
I'll show you what we have here. Subnet allocations.
Jesus.
This is really high tech, by the way.
Jesus.
But hey, we didn't have anything before I created this table, so it's an improvement. So you can see like here are the legacy Azure slots, and there's a lot of IP space here in legacy Azure. I just allocated this one for GKE pods, so this was given to pre-prod. This is production. Here's the production span. Here's the staging span. It has a decent amount. I mean, it's from 216 to 223. I can look to see how much of that we're using, but I'm pretty sure but I think what we might need to do is we might like need to take another block for production, maybe take another block for staging. We have plenty of these slots here. I don't know. Like I said, we don't necessarily need to worry about overlapping subnets for multi-large.
Okay, can I then ask, not for a favor, but very nicely, both you and Skarbek to sit down and think about how do we move away from this. I don't want a problem with addresses in Kubernetes at all. Like that is really difficult to figure out. Well,
and it's hard
not
to
necessarily.
change.
Yeah, exactly. So even if it's just someone sits down and thinks about this, writes down the options, we can decide whether we want to take a project immediately or not. But I can't live with this on my conscience. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, I mean,
you get to convince me that I'm overreacting, but I would like to be convinced.
Yeah. Like I said, this becomes a problem when we start peering, and you peer at the VPC level. And unfortunately, we made a decision to have a single VPC per environment. I don't think that would be easy to change right now.
We need
I
to
don't
talk.
know. Yeah, we can talk about it. I'll spin up an issue. I think like we may want to involve reliability as well.
We want to involve reliability. This is a bigger story.
Yeah, it is.
Because I'm
But
wondering,
for now, yeah.
let's say for some reason we decide in 2021 to double the size of infra, which is not impossible, right? And everyone starts like spinning up their new things because that's the next best thing. Like you justify the money you spent by creating new things that you need or not. Like I don't want something to stomp on our things in production just because we had.
I think part of what's difficult for us right now is that a cluster requires 2/16s because for the pods and the services. So that's a lot of IP space to give. That's why I needed to grab more for pre-prod, and we might need to grab some more for production. You can tell GKE to dynamically allocate that, but then you could have overlapping between two environments, and then we won't be able to peer them. So, okay, well, I'll spin up an issue for that.
Now we're getting into fun stuff, Jar and Skarbek.
Yeah, right.
All this up until now was just, cakewalk.
Yeah. Naming. Our main regional cluster is called GitLab GKE. I'm just going to slap on the zone name after GitLab GKE. So we'll have kind of a long name for these zonal clusters, but I think it's better than coming up with something clever.
Consider just the dynamic thing first. So the thing that will change between them, you want to observe them at the beginning, not at the end.
Oh, so we could do, so you mean like something like this?
Yes, for example. right? Something that will catch your eye.
Yeah, the only reason I don't like that is we typically move from general to more specific when it comes to names. Like when you're sorting, for example, if you're sorting by things, like you would see these groups separately from the GitLab GKE cluster. Yeah, I don't know, man.
I think another thing, it may not be worth even talking about, but GitLab appends or prefixes each node name with the cluster name.
Yeah.
So the node names become horrendously long and it ends up cutting off some of the context. But that's only in the name of the node. If you're using labels to search for nodes, this is not an issue at all.
Yeah, I was wondering about that too, which is why I was thinking like maybe like GitLab GKE, beta, Charlie, Delta. But then if we ever go into other regions, then, I don't know. How about this? Let's
Aaron,
stick
your
with
mic
what.
has stopped working.
My mic is not working. Yeah, because I'm playing with my hardware mic. The only problem I have with these things is that things that are static, you're gonna they're gonna be in your face more than what is not static in this case. So you'll see continuously GitLab GKE. It's GitLab. Why do we name it even GitLab GKE? Why are we not naming GPRD or something? I don't know. Right, like that is a static thing that is going to be there across all of the clusters we have, and what you actually care for the most here is the region and which cluster it is.
I agree. I think we're just kind of like also
This must
I
be a
don't
solved
know.
problem, right? Like we are not the first people to be thinking about what's a good way to name this stuff.
Naming is hard.
Hard, Amy. That's the problem here.
That's what it makes me feel like a lot of people probably have made this mistake, made mistakes on this, and we might be able to see how they landed, right?
I
Could do just
enjoy
G.
Let me
Jarv's suggestion.
Jarv.
If we need to do anything with parsing names, our script should be able to integrate with gcloud CLI and the Kubernetes CLI in order to parse out stuff that we need beyond that.
Okay, I'll just direct everyone to Jarv for a history lesson on gprod, gstaging, staging, pre, and all of that in the naming, and see how he feels about that. We can do that in a separate call.
I thought it was brilliant. The gprod, gstage, like no one knows what the G stands for. I think it's great. Okay, let me do this. I mean, we're not close to doing this on prod yet. I'll do this on staging and pre-prod. We can always, we're not going to be sending traffic to these new Zono clusters for a while. So we'll see what it looks like, and then we can change it. 1 NAT or 4 NATs? That is the question. Looks like pricing is not that different. Yeah, I saw your note. I'm fine. Like we can do 4 NATs. We'll move it. Maybe move this into the GKE module, Skarbek.
I think that's a good idea, actually.
Okay.
Because this is specific for GKE, and the labels and then routing should be specific for GKE as well. So I don't see any reason why we should not do that. I thought we had already done this, actually, but I guess not.
No, we didn't.
No.
Okay, IP addresses. We pre-allocate a lot of IPs for k8s workloads. It sounds like we're kind of on the same page here. Maybe create a new module. We just need a name for it. So maybe GKE reservations or GKE resources. You have a preference?
Maybe make it more generic of like GCP IP address reservations.
But it's still specific to GKE, right? Or you think we'll just put all of them in there?
Just put them all in there, man.
So GCP IP reservations, but we also have DNS.
Maybe just call it IP address reservations or something. I don't know. I wonder if we could. Well, I don't want to start reserving IP addresses inside of the DNS module. But
Okay.
So how about this? How about we ask other reliability team members to actually pitch in on this, because this is not going to be
Oh,
our top
God.
priority immediately, right? So we can
Yeah.
let that discussion go while we do other work. And by that time, we'll have 15 things to choose from.
It needs to, we need to decide soon, actually, because I can't, well, unless if I copy and paste all these IP reservations, 4 times, I need to figure this out.
I mean, you already have a established pattern. We could always migrate it to it later. If needed, pull it out into its own TF file just to make sure that we're not creating GKE, a
Sure,
massive
I can,
GKE or main TF file.
yeah, I
I
can
think
do
this
that.
is
It's
lower
just,
on the priority stack in general.
I say yeah, I can do that, but if I moving IPs into a module is going to be like, you have to use Terraform state surgery as well, right? You can't just, and if the names change, then name changes are usually destructive. So it means recreating them, which could have other implications. It's something we need to just figure out now and do, I think.
That's true. I forget about Terraform state. Maybe
Yeah.
we should.
I kind of like GKE reservations just because it's specific to GKE, so there'll be less people opinionated about it. If I create a new module called GCP IP reservations, or GCP reservations, then what are we going to put all of our IPs there, like for everything, or what?
That was my initial thought, yeah. I forget where
Like
our
IPs, yeah, IPs that
forget,
don't depend on anything else, I guess, right?
yeah, because I also forget where
Outside
we
of,
created our reservations that we got those blocks for the cloud natting stuff that we are
that's
sometimes using.
okay. Well, I'll take a look. I'll take a closer look. Maybe we just create a module for all IP reservations that are needed that don't have dependencies within Terraform, because that's what these are.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Next is firewall. That's obviously going to go in the module. Service accounts, it sounds like we're on the same page for that. That's it.
So is that something like Skavik, are you going to get involved in that work as well, or
I can, yeah.
by later?
I mean, I think like a lot of the work here isn't so tough. It's the decisions and getting someone to approve MRs. So as long as I can get Skarbek on to agree to things, then I think we're good.
Cool, sounds good.
Cool. Is there anything else we want to talk about?
I'm good.
All right, guys. Let's end the meeting then.
Well,
Thanks.
thanks a lot. See you later.
Bye, everyone.